tell them to come to
That's not our recommendation. I'm sure they do.
look at it. They all show. Don't even bring it. Oh, God, yeah. She's bad.
Ryan, I'm sorry.
Oh, fine.
Is that for me?
Come out of executive session, yes. Motion to come, yes.
Come out. All right, is there a motion to come out of executive? I had some. I had some.
Mayor, I move we return to regular session.
All right, is a motion to a second? Second. Discussion? Move to discussion, call the roll.
Mr. Rickman. Aye. Mr. McDowell.
Yes.
Mr. Burrell.
Aye.
Mr. Bedore.
Aye.
Ms. Devine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Chair Benjamin.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, Council, we will continue our budget workshop topics. Today's topic being economic development, as you all requested, some specific time being dedicated to our economic development priorities as you've laid out in your retreat planning and strategic planning. So we asked Ryan to at least get the conversation started today. I'm interested in feedback from you all, in particular on a couple of the items, so that if we need to come back with one more workshop.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Ryan.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just wanted to give you kind of a brief overview to start the conversation of what the Economic Development Department, some of our goals and objectives over the next year. So we'll start off with some discussion beginning around our partner organizations and the ED funding and some of the goals and objectives that they help us out with. Discuss the incentive programs, which is another topic I think there was some interest in. And then we can kind of lay out some of the plans for the department as far as our strategies for the next 12 months. And then some of the areas that we'll be trying to focus on business recruitment. So first of all, just to give kind of the general background, we've got 7 partner agencies with the City of Columbia, and they primarily support the department by assisting us with our core objectives, mostly around the recruitment of business retention and expansion, entrepreneurship, and then marketing activities. And again, our overall partner funding for this year is about $380,000. That has come down significantly since 2014. And we expect that number to continue to come down naturally on its own as some of the interest for the Mass General project will roll off at the end of the year. A lot of the money that has been freed up for that has gone towards an allocation to start an incentive program for the office. And here's a breakout just of the partners that are in our budget and the overall funding amounts for the current year.
Can you tell us what each one does for that amount of funding?
Yes, sir. So the next slide, I'll break out a little bit of the deliverables, and actually I brought some of the copies of the scopes of work for each of the current contracts, and I'll pass those out real quick.
I think the original goal around the business improvement district was that properties that were on the tax rolls or not on the tax rolls via nonprofit or public sector owned entities would all pay in as if they were taxed, so would pay a fee. So,
Yes, sir.
That's what the H-tax allocation was.
this preceded H-tax. This preceded
$300,000.
$360.
Yes, sir. It was a Yes, sir. It was a 10-year contractual arrangement with the city and city center partnership, and as the city owns property down in the bid, we essentially gave them an allocation to compensate for the tax increment they would have gotten off of the city property had it been private sector and producing revenue.
The city, the hospital, I mean, it was every public sector and private sector partner in the bid.
So we're making that up? Hospitality tax is making that up?
No, we see
I
that,
thought
we see,
that's
we
what it
see
was.
that, we see it as a.
No, they're getting 260 plus another 70. And, you know, I think these partner deliverables, I think, are part of the root of the discussion we need to have.
Sure.
Because I think we need to have a real discussion, are we getting our fair
Sure.
share from each one of these entities, and what have they truly delivered to the city, especially even if you look back over the last 5 years. You know, we've chased a lot of rabbits
Daniel,
with these.
I want to do this so for Erica, for posterity, so she can catch everything, but, yeah.
I think we've chased a lot of rabbits with these folks, and I think we need to understand where everything is, and you know, it might be time to change some horses and look at some reinvestment and some different avenues to promote growth in our city. We got a lot of corridors that are growing, and you know.
All right.
So, let's go back. Central SC, they're primarily the Regional Marketing Alliance, so they market the city as well as the 8-county region. Pretty involved with working with the counties, city, Department of Commerce on recruitment activity. Ingenuity SC is our local area project management team. They're pretty involved with the insurance technology and services cluster, which has been value add for the city of Columbia. But then, you know, a lot of the other initiatives.
When you say that, Ryan, can you just back up and go to Central and just say, all right, Central has delivered for the city of Columbia what in the last 36 months? What business have they brought to this community in the last 36 months?
Well, they support some of what we're doing. As far as what they have brought specifically, I mean, they've supported some other projects that we've done and are helping out with the lead generation firm. But as what they're bringing in, I mean, that's kind of an ongoing question that's not just being asked here, but I think a lot of other members of the community are having as well. Yes, sir.
Central SC? Yeah.
We did reduce them last year.
I don't mean to pile it on. I know for years, I've been asking that question, even to Executive Director. I live in the eastern part of the town where we do have warehouses, or we have some areas that's prime for construction, and having some infrastructure there. I don't see nothing that they're doing. I just cannot point to anything that they've done. I've always asked to, you know, when you go, you bring folks, do you bring them to this side of the town, this part of the city? There's no, that's why I question that, if they can show me something, I'll change my thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, same question with Ingenuity SC. It says the assist project management of the insurance technology. What does that really mean? I guess I'm trying to understand, because, you know, at one time it was hydrogen, and then one time it was small reactor, nuclear reactors, and then it was, you know, whatever the wind was blowing at the time. And, you know, we funded these organizations for a long time, and I think the benefit that we're getting is not helping us grow. And I'm trying to understand what we're getting for our investment, because if you look at it over a 5-year or 10-year period, I'm not sure what we got.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And obviously, I've always had a different view about the roles these respective organizations play in the entire regional ecosystem. I've been probably the biggest advocate on behalf of the Alliance, Central SC Alliance, for the last several years, pushing for them to have more funding, and then supporting the reduction in funding, primarily because of the focus that we want to have on city center, vertical, knowledge economy jobs, and also the other, again, more city-focused efforts. I do believe that we play a role, however, with Central SC in the entire regional emphasis. The university is a partner, financial partner. The county is, the various counties surrounding us. We deserve, we I think it requires that we have a seat at the table financially in supporting the overall regional efforts across the counties that they serve. Obviously, the deliverables that we ought to require from them need to be clear, and they need to be able to respond to those affirmatively. And that's been obviously a subject of discussion. I think Ingenuity does fantastic work. I mean, you're right, Daniel. We spent some time on fuel cells and SMRs, and obviously the competitiveness report and the work they've been doing with MBLG, I think has been actually very important and cohesive in getting the business community focused on the role that they ought to be playing individually, but also in the aggregate. And I mean, I support their work, and Tamika is also very involved there in leadership too. I still think that the Business Improvement District is one of the best things the city ever did, and us playing a role there financially, as other cities do with their business improvement districts by paying a fee in lieu of property taxes is a proper role. Now, looking at that through the same lens, or through the lens of since this partnership was established, they've also received H-tax. I think is a proper way to look at it and look at it in the totality. But clean and safe is one of the best things we've ever done. Right. And so we got but we do have to look at it in its totality.
But
so
I think
yeah.
you have to understand to have that discussion is where it was when we made that commitment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely,
where
absolutely.
They are today, and, you know,
Absolutely,
you're,
absolutely.
You're spending, you know, the clean and safety is managed by a third party. It's not managed.
Yeah,
by
block by block. Yeah, but we help pay it. So, but we help pay it. So.
But we're paying it with
yeah.
H-tax. So, you know, then you got the seven. This is where I'm concerned because we have too many empty spaces in our corridors.
Well, the idea that
And we've spent money for the last, you know, 5 years ago, or longer, when we asked SC Central to help with the Palmetto building. That's why we gave them more money to find a tenant. Well, that tenant found itself.
We played a role in that. I'm not sure they did. So.
You get my point.
Yeah.
But that's where, you know, these things aren't supposed to be forever. It's the same with the H-tax. We've got to wean people out so that we can refocus. Our landscape has changed. Our needs have changed. And I think we've got to look at all these and really decide, are we at the same place we were 5
sure.
or 10 years ago?
And whether or not the emphasis of our corridor focus needs to be on North Main or Divine or Millwood or what have you. I mean, I think that's a healthy discussion to have. And the last one, we need a new incubator, y'all. If it's an incubator or accelerator, piggybacking a little bit on some of the Central SC work, but the work that they did last week, and Ryan and the firm that he hired through the city on lead generation, we had a fantastic trip up north last week. Some great leads, some great contacts, saw some really awesome work being done in an incubator, but more so an accelerator program up there. Our incubator needs to do new life. USC's decision not to go forward with their incubator down in Olympia, I think really just presents a real opportunity for us to try and make something happen that's much more meaningful and significant than our current space there. But
I think there's some private sector folks that ought to be leading that charge at this point, and you know, things that people like Trey Judy and other folks are doing fits into this program. You know, at some point
we saw some. I would say we saw some very smart partnerships.
Yeah.
I think that given making sure Ryan has the resources through us to help guide could be pretty significant. I would say last week we spent time in Wallingford, Shelton, Hartford,
Norwalk.
New Haven, Norwalk. I'm missing another town in Connecticut, but also, of course, New York City. And there's some real promise out there. And I will tell you guys that this city in this region shows very well. It shows very well, but being very aggressive out there and pushing our own narrative and our own story is key. And just wanted to kind of.
And I think
I
we did
just-
that. I think
Oh,
that's
absolutely,
what
absolutely.
that's what I would say. I don't mean to interrupt, but to the question of what are the partners doing, I think they can do more, but if the response that Ryan and the mayor got when they were there was like, wow, Columbia, we didn't know, then that tells me that the direction has to be very specific to these partners if they're not gonna take it upon themselves to get out there and hustle for us. Because that's what my takeaway was from when he came back and told me the wonderful response. We internally put that together along with the lead generation.
Yeah, I think regionally and as a state, you know, we're still sold as very much being manufacturing based. I mean, that's the responses we got from most everybody we talked with up there. You're from South Carolina, we just thought you did manufacturing. And we're like, no, we're a city. We actually have more than that. We have insurance technology, fintech, knowledge economy jobs. We have entrepreneurs. We have places to do this stuff. But, you know, I get to some degree that the regionals and the state and the counties, they go out and sell that because that's where their bread and butter is. That's their capacity. I think the mayor's absolutely right. You know, we got out and got a chance through hiring 310 to go out and target these specific type of companies that are the ones that we want to bring here, that will occupy office space, that will pay well-paying jobs, that will hire graduates out of the university. And we told that narrative on our own terms. And I just think there's a lot of people out there that had were either unaware or didn't have a good perception of what Columbia does from a business standpoint.
Just one point.
I mean, you just made the case. It's my whole case in this discussion. You just made it in that single example. It's the problem.
Let me say, I agree with the mayor in terms of us maybe probably taking another look at deliverables that we put on the table for the money, for the dollar. But I still think that we hopefully, you know, what you're doing now, or what you said y'all just did, man, that's to me the way it should work. And I also, you know, confess that there's some things we ought to be doing still locally, especially when we look at area development and attraction. But I still kind of go back to some of these office parks that we have in the northern part of town. They don't seem to be promoted, one. And two, I think those are areas where we can get a big hit for the dollars in terms of the number of jobs it would bring to the area. Most of them aren't going to look to go downtown city center in terms of, you know,
Yes, sir.
and dozens and dozens of jobs. So I still think we collectively ought to take a look at how we can put together the bait to attract in those areas. And I'm willing to do whatever I can, but I still think there's some things, Mayor, as we discussed about a day or two ago, we need to do locally to make sure that, you know, we're doing our part to be a part of the magnet, and rather than always paying somebody else to do it. I think we have the capacity, maybe in one or two areas we may be a little slack, but we can correct that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and we haven't divorced ourselves from that strategy. I mean, I think some of the things we'll do later on in the year, in the few months, would lend themselves well out towards, you know, the I-20 area and the Enterprise campus as well. So I think we're just kind of trying to touch on something, get a little activity, spin it up there, and then kind of move on to some other things. And there would be some good opportunities for things around life science type businesses that could lend themselves well to being out towards Midlands Tech or in a more industrial type area. And those do provide good paying jobs. So we're still keeping an eye on that as well.
Okay, I just wanted to add, I guess, I've recognized the importance of us being part of a regional opportunity and promotion, but I think that just reading what you have there, Ryan, I do agree. I think at least for Central SC, those deliverables to me they seem very vague. And I'm not sure, we actually get some really good data back on, the marketing materials and what does this mean. So I think you need to tighten that up. I think that's the major concern that I have with Central SC is I know they're doing things, and I think being part of a regional effort is fine, but if we know that we've got some very specific needs and that Columbia's needs are different from Lexington, they're different from Newberry, we need to be a lot more focused on what they're doing regionally impacts us, whether it's our water customers or anything else. And so I'd like to see that revised to be very specific with what their deliverables are so we can actually measure them.
Yeah, and the scope of works they handed out, it will have some more specifics in those packets that you've got, but we're certainly open to coming up with some additional things to add into that. I mean, I'm always glad to do that and work with y'all if y'all would like to provide some input.
And then I guess, can I add, because I was wondering, so as far as Mr. Mayor or Ryan, since USC has made that decision, what is the plan moving forward? And if we don't have a definite plan, I actually have some ideas on how we can capitalize on having an incubator that might be a little bit more focused. Steve?
On the incubator? I think it's worth talking about, because they let the EDA grant go. Man, it's worth, got a couple of ideas just based on the meetings we had last week, but probably got to do a little more due diligence on. But let's dig deep in it.
And I don't have a problem with the Ingenuity. I think they've done a good job. And also reaching out to the young people, even high schools, in terms of new technology and training. But the rest of them, we could honestly consider the deliverables we need a bit more.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then finally, Columbia World Affairs Council actually met with Fred's son, Dixon Monk, this morning. They've done a really good job of, they assist sometimes when we happen to be on an overseas trip. They do a really good job of bringing in folks internationally to the city of Columbia and just kind of not just raising economic awareness, but also the cultural and the educational awareness. They've had some really good connections that they've helped facilitate with the University of South Carolina and the Fraunhofer Institute out of Kaiserslautern in Germany. So I looked through the scope of work this morning with them. I'd say they've accomplished most of the things that they committed to doing for this year. ITology, we used to fund them a little bit more. That's kind of diminished over the years, and I think ITology's really kind of pushed into K through 12 education and maybe some job skills training as well. So we've continued to support them, but that might be a one that's kind of gotten a little more on the fringe of what we're doing as an office when it relates directly to recruitment or retention expansion.
And Ryan and I have had this conversation, maybe specifically, but when you talk about talent retention and building a pipeline, if you can get kids, specifically girls, interested in IT-related things at an early age, then they will be the ones that will fill those fintech jobs and insurance technology. So just my thought, I think we need to think of it broader sense, and I'm not necessarily advocating for more money, but I would hate to see us be short-sighted on saying it's K through 12 and say they're not listed, they're not under our mission, and then we lose sight of that we're not cultivating our young people into the jobs that we know will be here.
In that school districts?
I mean, they do that, but we all know that there's a very limited time that schools have, and so when you're talking about actually getting someone, particularly, again, young girls, interested in STEM fields, schools don't do that kind of specificity. And so ITology has some programs. I think Howard went with me, right? Howard and I went over there and we're very impressed with what they're doing.
I think when we reduced them 2 years ago, that $10,000 was gonna be because they were working on one of the conventions or convocations?
Conferences, it had nothing to do with
Yeah.
training.
Yeah,
It was a conference.
yeah, they were, and I said, they're still doing.
What's the
gosh, I can't
conference
think of
they
what
help
it's
you put on?
called.
It started off with what was originally POSCON, and that spun out of ideology, I think, after Todd Lewis
Yeah,
left
that was a
ideology.
Todd thing.
But
But
we've
they're
brought
doing
back an
great.
open source conference this year, and it's something we've worked on internally with our office and Todd to
They're
bring
doing
back.
Makers Fair this year with Adventure, and I know that's one of the things that they've been talking about how they can incorporate the city. But again, I'm not advocating for a certain level of funding. I'm just thinking generally, we just need to not lose sight on, you know, what our partners are doing that might help us with
Yes, ma'am.
building our talent pool.
And I guess the way I'm thinking, it would be good to get some entrepreneurs involved in the ideology and OBO, since the city is heavily funded and invested in entrepreneurs or small businesses. I wonder if they have a role into teaching the new entrepreneurs how to handle technology right now and how to do sales on the internet and e-commerce.
That's a good
that kind of
idea.
thing. I think that's something that they can be a big part of if there is a way that they can develop a program to help the entrepreneurs and working with the OBO to make that happen for the new businesses coming up.
Yeah, we've talked with Melissa a little bit about that already, and so we're discussing that, and then I'm meeting with ideology for kind of their mid-year review by the end of this week, so that's something I can certainly bring up with Tammy during that discussion.
I think it'd be worth, and again, we got a lot of different information last week, and I would say in almost every other respect, and I can say this is more than public record, I feel pretty good about where we are in relations to Hartford, Connecticut, and actually the entire economic ecosystem of Connecticut. However, when it comes to insurance, that is the center of the Western Hemisphere. It is still, even with some of the more recent challenges and defections that they've had, they got more actuaries probably than any place else in the world still here. They're doing some things right, and maybe looking at just along the lines of what Howard and Tamika just said, maybe looking at the ways they mentioned a few things last week, the way they're trying to continue to develop their ecosystem, their talent pipeline for kids. Might be worth taking a look at and seeing how we compare and maybe how ideology fits into that, if it does at all. It may not. But obviously we need to keep our eyes focused on still making sure we're giving young people the opportunity to thrive in these fields, whether this is the model or not. I think that it requires a little more due diligence.
Okay.
I think it's also important to note that big retail box stores are closing up and going away from the reality of living everyday life. So I would love to start brainstorming into what you can do to fill in those empty retail space, because that's going to create jobs, create a higher income level throughout the city. There's a lot of things out there that I think we can go ahead and jump start on it, and if we can, and start, and maybe partner with some of these organizations that we fund to give you a direct deliverable in some of those ideas. I can discuss with you a little bit later what I heard and what I read in the paper that you can, maybe reach out and start developing a plan and trying to recruit some of these businesses to fill in those empty spaces in the next year or two.
Okay. And then Mass General, still some funding in our budget related to that, and that should roll out by the end of the year. And then the Columbia Chamber of Commerce, while not technically in our budget like the other partners are per se, there's still some funding for what used to be BRAC, now military support and friendliness initiatives. Because it's something we managed in the past, we continue to manage that, but it's not directly in our office budget.
I think that if we're going to consider any of these folks to stay in our budget, there has to be some hardcore deliverables. With the realization is that you can't recruit X amount of jobs, businesses, because if you read what the memorandums of what these folks are doing, it's all horse punching. It's just generalizations. It doesn't have any kind of delivery or anything. And, you know, it's frustrating to me because this has been going on as long as I've been here, and the deliverables, we're just not getting it. We're continuing to feed these folks. I think we need to reevaluate every one of these. And if we decide that it's there needs to be some very hard-nosed deliverables, with the understanding is that if you don't make 100% of your deliverable, you're out. Period. It is time to hold folks accountable and not keep feeding us, oh, we're helping with your recruiting. Just because you joined 6 other people that recruited, that you didn't deliver that to us. We need to quit praising all this stuff and actually critique it so that we get a better result. People are taking advantage of the city, and it's time to change that.
All right. All right. All right.
With regards to incentives, as recently as last year, we introduced 2 programs under the department that focused on A, commercial recruitment type projects, and B, growth for smaller but high impact local businesses. And the current annual funding amount for those programs is $200,000. Those funds are all tied to hard expenses for business, so the company would have to spend some type of upfit cost in redoing their space, as well as furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We'll add to that again once Mass General comes off, and then other than that, if there are some other adjustments that are made with regards to partner funding. And then we've got a concept for retail and restaurant recruitment that we're working on currently. Another initiative I thought of, something the county does with their capital funding, and I know we've talked about it with regards to affordable housing, but they take a percentage of the fee stream that comes out of any project that goes in a multi-county industrial park. That goes into a capital allocation account, and then the county has the ability to use that for things such as land acquisition, infrastructure product development for some of the industrial parks that they work on. So that would be another option of something that we consider if the city had interest in doing that. I don't think we could do anything with our existing projects, but as we bring new things into the city that are economic development related, that fall into that MCIP program, we could look at taking a portion of that fee stream and using that for economic development purposes as well.
Right. Does the county take that fee stream off before they allocate it to the
Before.
county to school? And
Yeah, they get the gross.
so they
I think it's 7% of the gross stream on the front end, and then the rest is dispersed out, however.
they're taking it off the top.
I think the incentive program's only going to work is if we're working with Krista and her team to cut some of the red tape and get people through the process. And that's a growing trend nationally. If you look at all the folks who are growing, they have created an ease for people to get building permits, getting through the process.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be a staffing issue. We may need to look at do we have enough people to do reviews, and how are we handling all our regulations and truly tracking the time that it takes as we keep adding layers and layers. I sent y'all all a copy of a thing from the National Housing Builders Group that talks about reduction, and I think we need to take it to heart. It needs to be part of this budget session because it is affecting our growth.
So while and Chris is here, we talked about this a little bit as a context of what Ryan's doing too, and where I know y'all are trying to go, but Krista, I don't know if you can come to the podium real quick, just as a reminder of what council has done. So it's really this whole idea of expedited review, and you all did away with certain fees and all that. I want you to kind of really have apples and apples comparisons when we're making those with other places, just real briefly. And then I agree about the ability to continuously streamline, but I just want to remind you all where we are.
We've done a lot. We've done
Yeah.
a lot. Please.
Certainly. So with regard to the fees, council eliminated plan review fees a number of years ago. So commercial plan review fees we do not collect unless someone comes back for a third review. With regard to expedited review, express review, by the time you follow the process that most communities go through to get an express review, we will have conducted our first review already. And so generally speaking, when we've talked to people about it, our reviews are quicker than you can generally get your express review in most communities. Because we have for building permit review, now we've also got land disturbance, there's stormwater, all of those things. But when you're looking at building permit review, we've got a 3-week turnaround for those first comments. So when we've offered it, people have said, well, your review is actually going to meet our needs for that. Because we do have the development center, which is a one point of entry, which a lot of communities are still trying to implement, that we implemented in 2005, and we continue to try to improve upon that, as well, getting our permits online, which we're very hopeful to have here within the next several months. So we take to heart what you say as far as trying to continuously improve. We did so with the implementation of EnerGov. We had business groups come together to streamline our processes, reduce our applications as had been asked, and we're continuing to try to do that.
Krista, how do you get into the development center? How did you make entry into that?
It's right there where you pay your water bill. It's right inside the front door.
I'm not talking about physically. If I was a potential restaurant or something coming in, how do you get into that process?
Well, the development center is construction review. So we're one point of entry for construction review, not necessarily from soup to nuts, which is, I'm thinking about opening a business. Okay. But the OBO has some terrific resources for that, as I think starting a business, I can't remember the publication name, but it helps guide you through that process, and they've incorporated our processes as well as business license and those kinds of things. Okay. So, but from the development center, we do have an online presence. We conduct pre-application meetings with developers, businesses who want to discuss among all of the disciplines what may be needed when they come to apply.
And Krista mentioned to me too, as we've been talking through our budget review, and of course, I'm interested in this in other areas of the city too, but this idea of like the Richland County Library has gone through with Melanie Huggins of what the customer experience is. Because I think we're doing a lot. Sometimes I feel like y'all are probably hearing things that could be tweaked or done better. People just from literally when you walk in off the street and go through a process, it would capture what Melanie's done. I don't know, that wasn't through Do Good Columbia, was it?
Well, yeah, it's based on human-centered design.
The human-centered design, so actually capturing what the process actually is that someone experiences
right.
when they go through plan review or whatever it might be. So that's something we're also looking at. But if there's specific things that you still think, I just didn't want you all to forget some revenue-generating things that we have been doing that we don't do anymore. There's a cost for that, and that's okay. But I think we need to know real specifically from you if there are things that you think we need to do otherwise.
So, Krista, what's been the feedback, I guess, since because I used to hear it a lot more than I do now, so I'm just wondering, are we getting feedback that the changes have been positive and we're going in the right direction?
From the development center, absolutely.
Okay.
And what I'm hopeful for when we come to you in a couple months, and the eventuality of the ordinance, the zoning ordinance changes, will bring with it a whole host of other improvements to help streamline and make more logical, at least, the zoning review process. So, yeah, we don't hear as much as I think, and I don't know that Ryan gets quite as many calls with the development center. There are always going to be issues, and we do love specific examples so we can kind of try to triage those and figure out what went wrong and fix it. And The folks that come from outside, like Ben, for instance, he's gone away, he's gone and done development outside of the city. He comes back and says, you know, working with the city was much easier than it's been in other places. So that's not to say we're perfect, I understand, and we can get some improvements, but we hear good feedback.
We also changed the process on subs, requiring that subs
Correct.
get their own permits as well.
Yeah,
too,
we
right?
don't charge for those any longer as
still
well.
charge
Those are
those.
under the GC.
Has we ever commissioned or just back to Daniel's original point, looked at side by side other respective communities just on the timing issue from start to finish? That probably would just be good for us looking on processes. We have made strides, but as you go through all the different processes, it'd just be interesting to see how we stack up side by side. And I don't know how you do that. Y'all have to guide us in that.
I'd like to add to that is, you know, when's the last time we went out as a city and went to people who've been through the process, gone and sat down with real estate agents and different developers and engaged them, hey, what are we missing? Because I think right now, if I ask all of our staff, and this is I'm trying to improve us, so being critical is part of that.
It's true.
Because you don't improve if all you do is get it praised, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it'd be very interesting to see what that response would be if you went and you sat with, you know, pick a couple of the big boys, pick some smaller guys like a Frank Kaysen or somebody who's going to be honest, who has challenges and who may agree or not agree. Ask them about it. How does it affect when they go through and they're trying to get the water meter in the process and everything else? I mean, I think it's upon us to engage, to improve, not wait around, because a lot of people aren't going to come see you because they're worried. You know, I mean, some people have that perception, which I'm like, call Krista anytime. She'll pick up the phone and talk to you. She doesn't bite.
I think that was that concept of the customer experience I was just mentioning. I think that's exactly what they did at the library, for example, and I think we need to do something similar to that.
You know, I think it'd be great for Ryan's group to go out and you know, hey, guys, you know, what can we do to help you bring more tenants into us if it's on the North Main Quarter that I still think is one of our fastest growing and best areas. You know, what can we do in 5 Points? What can we do in these other areas that need the growth? How can we be helping you? Because those are direct impacts that help benefit our community. And it doesn't take 2 years to chase an elephant, to bring them here and promise them the world. Somebody just wants to get into business and get open. So I would encourage us to take advantage of the folks that are here and improve ourselves. Don't wait around on them.
Mr. Davis and Mr. Badura.
I admit, I think you guys, the reason to tell you, if I say that you know, the complaints of the process is lessened, that's true. And I think, you know, from my experience has been trying to, sometimes drawn into it, and then sometimes it's just a situation of the process of getting folks to really understand. The smaller businesses seem to have the most challenges. They don't understand. So if I know I would have to be educated if I can do the A to Z, go through that A to Z process, so that because I've been able to, you know, kind of caution folks about the position they're taking versus what the realities are, even starting with permitting and all that. I think we can benefit from it. I do see the changes. I'm not getting that many complaints. The only complaints I get are from smaller businesses that are just kind of getting off the ground and may not have had some of the preliminary training or understanding that some of the more experienced folks have.
Sure.
And I think our system, where it's headed now, can really benefit the first time that somebody just, you know, woke up last night and had that dream. That's important to them too. steps versus mid-steps, and how do I get to the finish line, and, or whether they believe some of what's been told to them by somebody that may not have the full story.
And,
Mr. Badura?
well, I'm going to share my experience with you guys. When I first built my restaurant, you know, I don't know, in 2005, I didn't have any problem with the city. And this was before I was elected and most of us being elected. So I think the staff is doing what they can when it comes to plan review and everything else. Now, my only concern, and I think I've discussed this, you know, when we're talking about how to make businesses open fast or cut the red tape, and is the parking variance application that they have to fill out to BOZA. You know, I understand, and my concern is like in the hospitality districts, and I've made that little discussion, I think, with you, Krista, and a couple other council members maybe, is to waive that variance application, parking variance application in the hospitality districts around the city, just because they don't have to wait 45 days or 60 days until it's scheduled to go in front of a committee. But I haven't heard BOZA declining a request of parking variance in a hospitality district. So I feel like it would be beneficial for small businesses or any businesses that, you know, especially in the hospitality district, that if they're going to get the approval, let's just waive it if we can, and maybe do a requirement at the staff level instead of waiting for BOZA and waiting for a hearing that might take 45 to 60 days. That's something that would, you know, I would love to, whether we introduce an ordinance, whether we do a resolution, whether we do city policy, that's something that I really want to get done, or if we find ways to have it done if we can.
Yeah, you'll find in the new code that zoning parking minimums have been reduced. We're actually proposing in this larger central business district, not just Main and Sumter as we currently have, eliminating parking requirements altogether. Now that isn't all of the hospitality districts, but it's a good chunk of the downtown. So that will go a long way.
And I appreciate that, and I know we have a public hearing about that next month, next week.
We can look at the others as well.
So, you know, Divine Street District is one of them, and Rosewood District is another that, you know, I hear all about. I mean, that's all I hear. And there are other hospitality districts going to pop up sooner or later that we need to look at and see if we can be helpful to those businesses who are trying to open up in the shortest amount of time rather than waiting 45 to 60 days. So I think if we can do that happen, I don't know if that's in the new code to Divine Street and Rosewood Hospitality District or not, but it's something that maybe we need to bring in or maybe adopt the plan if we can in the next weeks to come.
We can discuss
Thank you.
that.
Yeah, and I'd just add, you can stay or not stay. It seems like an eternity ago, Ryan, you guys were working on the business retention expansion program, you and McCullough. How many years ago was that? I mean, it's been a while.
We did that through about 4 years, probably up through 2013, 14.
But the focus, understanding that small businesses do create most of the jobs here, and trying to find ways at least to kind of go through that process. I thought it was a very effective program. You got a chance to really get the pulse of the business community, and trying to figure out what we're doing well, what we still have challenges in, but by engaging them, we might just want to think about breathing new life into that again, and obviously your office working closely with Melissa Lindler's office, and just making sure it says cohesive. But that just might be the business retention expansion, BR, I guess it might be business in motion. I forget what we eventually called it. But it was a good way to do a census, kind of a good state of affairs of existing businesses, and not always the big guys. So
we are planning to revive that.
Yeah,
actually.
I think that probably would answer a whole lot of different questions, and continue to get a sense of the body. So. Yeah, I thought it really well last time.
And I think even as recently as within the past 3 months, I know we've sat in on some meetings where, like with Dana and the city utilities folks, met with a group of the the Home Builders Association and some of those folks to talk about kind of how that process goes with getting through utilities and the challenges you have, you know, when that comes with easements and sometimes the real estate transfers that go along. It's probably something that's kind of been done in a bit of a siloed piecemeal fashion. So I think to Councilman Rickenman's point to kind of really look at that process front to back and then engage those stakeholders, not only the direct people, but you know, your folks like your commercial real estate brokers as well, the retail groups, the business associations who we've been meeting with would give us a more 360-degree view of what's out there and what we can do.
I don't know if council's aware, two of the hospitality district EDs are transitioning, so that's going to be interesting too, to get to know two
I knew
new
Amy Beth
directors.
was, I knew Amy Beth was. too.
Amy Beth and the Five Points
Meredith
and the
is too?
Vista.
I think she's already gone.
Oh, we just got an email from her about cleaning the papers. She said it earlier this week.
Amy Beth is
Yep.
with
Well, I knew
Gourmet
that.
shop.
Yeah, I knew
That's
that. No,
Meredith.
I'm saying
Meredith.
Meredith just sent us an email like 2 days ago about cleaning safety.
She's going into private business to herself.
Meredith.
Yeah.
All right, 2019 priorities, tight but aggressive list here. Continuing to flesh out this recruitment program that we've started, and I'll discuss the results of our first trip from last week here shortly. But I think we, outside of normal trade and industry conferences that we would go to, we want to do at least 2 more city-led trips throughout the course of the year. We need to overhaul and update some of our website collateral. We realize that 310 has kind of engaged us about that, and so we'll work on kind of getting the departmental information a little more lined up with where it needs to be to sell the city. The formalized retention and expansion program, Business in Motion, we're going to bring that back. And then I think doing some things that are promotional, targeted towards site selectors and commercial real estate brokers.
That was fast, man. I didn't realize you were going to do it that fast. I'm
Yeah,
impressed.
it was quick. Erica just threw it in there on the fly. So it's been at the back of my mind for a while. So it's just been kind of a function of time. But your best advocates and your stakeholders are your existing business community, and we realize we need to be out there on the ground more. We've already met with all 6 of the local merchants associations and gotten their feedback as far as what a retail recruitment program, how that might look and how it might serve them both collectively and individually. And so we've promised all of them that they can continue to see us regularly at their ongoing meetings. So we're going to stay active and engage with them as well. Let's see, the Opportunity Zone program, that's still very active, and we'll be going to a conference on that in the next few weeks. Assisting with the comparative community analysis, and I know that that's something that Council has discussed a lot as well, with the prospect of working with the Urban 3 group. And then, of course, part of the reason we're here today to get some bearing and coordinate with y'all as City Council to understand where you want to see our efforts most targeted and how we can be effective and what y'all want us to do. So we have started the process of scheduling individual meetings. We've spoke with Sam already and Councilman Duvall, and so I will probably try to get the rest of y'all in the next month and a half, just to meet with you a little bit one-on-one and talk about some of the key points that y'all are interested in us focusing on.
Have we started that comparative community analysis yet? I thought we were going to hire somebody to do that.
It has not started at this point. I'm not sure what the status was on that, other than we were having some conversations with folks about what the study might even look like to begin with. Upcoming trips that we've got planned, we just completed the spring recruiting mission to the Northeast, and that was very much focused kind of on insurance technology services, IT, in and around the Hartford and New York area. The ICSC Carolinas Conference will be coming up in Charlotte next week. A staff member will be attending that as well and looking at some retail opportunities here locally. There's also a...
Is that the one we talked about before, that there's multiple staff people going from different departments, or like any of the development corporations going? There was one conference we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the need to coordinate efforts. So is that the conference or not?
No, ma'am, I don't believe that is the
Okay.
one. Shared Services and Outsourcing Week, another conference that's coming up next week. Actually, we'll be traveling there with Richland County, and we've already got 6 meetings, individual meetings booked while we're there as well. So, back office processing type jobs, accounting, financial services, things of that nature. Payroll, HR, things like that.
I was talking about the shared, you talking shared services?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So that would be back office type jobs. Retail, Recon's the big retail conference each year in May. So we'll plan to be there as well. And then a bio conference, which will be in Philadelphia this year. And that will be very much focused on life sciences and bio-type jobs, something we're also in discussion and coordinating with Midlands Tech on as well. So there may be some joint opportunities. And then a to-be-determined fall mission, just based on the results from our trip this past week, and then whatever may come up with working with some of the life science companies. We'll kind of see which area we think will be the most productive, and look at retail as well, and then figure out, what makes sense for a fall recruiting trip for the city. And that's it.
All right. Any other questions, Orion? I do just want a personal privilege. The trip last week was really good. It was rigorous. It was nonstop. Ryan did an excellent job pulling it all together, guys. Really was nimble, but focused. We saw some really incredibly talented companies doing some great things, that many of which would fit right in here. Some who were ready to rock and roll, looking at prospects. Some that were not there, but needed to be introduced to the community. And he did a great job, Ryan. Good job pulling it all together.
Yeah, and I had another slide that must have been an earlier version of the presentation I brought up.
This one?
I think
It's on the packet, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With the update from this trip?
Yes, ma'am.
It's in our packet.
Mission update.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's in here.
For
The one
10,
that-
10 meetings over 2.5 days. Yeah, so. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Yeah, well, so we were up in the Northeast for a period of 3 days. We originally had 12 meetings scheduled. We had 2 of them back out at the last minute. One had already made a decision on to do an expansion at another location that they have, and then the second one we're scheduling a follow-up conference call with them after the fact. But most of them were kind of a wide variety of projects, insurance tech, financial services related businesses. We met with a venture capital firm up there who actually has another company that they provide funding to, and we've already had a follow-up call with that business as well, had that on Monday. Probably one of the most impressive things, and we touched on that earlier, was the Hartford InsurTech Hub, which is an accelerator program. So it's a kind of a step up above what we do with our incubator. Their accelerator program, which is primarily funded by the private sector. So you've got your large insurance companies, Aetna, Cigna, Hartford. They put a lot of money into this. And they do get some matching funding from the local government and the states. But by and large, I think the private sector kind of really puts the meat into this program. And they have a person that they hire who goes around the world and recruits these high-tech companies to come and be in Hartford. And so they give them about 3 months worth of grant funding. They put them in this accelerator program where they work with them hands-on for 3 months. Their thinking was, it's challenging to do business here. We're trying to kind of upscale and add value to some of the work that our traditional legacy insurers are doing. So they're bringing in technology companies from the outside. They said out of the 10 businesses that they did in the first round, 7 of them actually wound up staying in Hartford. And I think that was kind of a unique approach because from our incubator's perspective, we've normally just kind of tried to work with what we've got locally. This was kind of a different spin on that, where they're really reaching outside the community, identifying businesses that they think have a huge amount of value, and then bringing those in. And those companies, by and large, the bulk of them will stay. Some of them will get acquired by some of the legacy carriers there as well, but still, that adds value to what those businesses are doing
It
too.
was an interesting approach. So these companies were early stage. They were not brand new, early stage, literally from all across the globe. I mean, as far away as Australia.
2 of them from Australia.
Europe, here in the States. But they brought them to Hartford with the promise of connecting them with new business opportunities, helping accelerate them. And again, at the end of the day, a lot of them stayed right there in Hartford. They're only in their second year, but it's a very impressive model. Actually, London-based company that actually.
Yeah, the lead company is called Startup Bootcamp, and they have these types of accelerator programs in 26 cities across the world, even into South America. They've got a few. There's some very engaging folks that we met with there, and we're working on scheduling a follow-up call later on this month. But I think they've even got interest in what's going on here in Columbia from an insurance perspective, and want to have some discussion about possibly bringing something like this to the city.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Ryan.
You're welcome.
So for clarity, do you all feel like we need to bring economic development discussion back or make recommendations regarding what you all said, particularly with the partners and all?
I think if you could present to us some deliverables that you know aligns with Envision Columbia as well as what
The
the
direction
different
of the
departments.
department, right?
Yeah. would be
Okay.
good.
I just want to cut everybody. They can't cut everybody, guys. So.
No,
I'm not saying cut.
I think the deliverables need to align with
Yeah, absolutely,
the-
absolutely.
But all
I mean,
fairness, you might as well just hand them a blank checkbook if we're not gonna make them be accountable for it. And I think that's the frustrating part is that these folks we're talking about have been partners for 10+ years. And every time we get an update, it's, oh, well, we're partnering with this person. That partner is partnering with that partner who's partnering with that partner. And to give us a scope that doesn't bring a delivery. I think at some point we gotta refocus and, you know, maybe it's time now. Yeah, that's my opinion, but if you read what these folks sent us, it's unacceptable. There is nothing in here, there's no accountability, zero, there's no penalty.
I'm not gonna say cut everybody's heads off. All I know is over the years, when I'll use you know what we're talking about, as an example. When I hear about businesses, they say they have helped or were responsible for coming to Columbia. Then I look at where those businesses are located. A number of them have been across the border, now on this side. Then I look at I-20, maybe a little bit of 26 coming into town. The number of areas there, we can daylight for some brand companies along that corridor. They would be bringing jobs. And there are office parks out there. The Enterprise campus, you know, I always thought that was going to be the crown jewel. And, that's what I'm comparing, what I see, where there has not been, if you want to call them deliverables or whatever. It's not happening. I'm not saying it won't happen. Of course, it's when. Right now is the best time to see it.
But, yeah, I don't want to try to elongate the conversation. Come back with some recommendations consistent with our plan, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
But good work, and I'm impressed at y'all's trip last week. I think that's definitely the type of stuff that we'd like to see.
All right.
Yeah, and then take some of us with us next time. Kind of know
We're trying
what we're looking for.
What was the temperature Mr. Mayor?
It was cold.
It was like,
And some boy from Saluda didn't bring a coat, but I'm not gonna say anything about that. I told him he was crazy.
I've got my medals.
Thank y'all very much. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank y'all.
this is 1:41, so, yeah, we got 20 minutes to work a session. Okay.
Thank you, y'all are
We can go eat
doing a
again.
great job. I always compliment you for staying on schedule. So thank you.
They just want to get back to the food table.
It's a good food day.
Time for afternoon salad.
That fruit looked good, too.
They had
Y'all,
parfaits
I'm
back
gonna
there
have
too.
to step
Oh, I
out for a
didn't see
second.
that.
One of these, good text. So I might go ahead and do that now.
Oh, yeah,
But I'll-
Thursday, we'll
yeah,
do it now,
yeah,
then
so-
go back.
Well, if they can start early.
I need to go run errands.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
down, push and start time and try to get back up here.